Which is the Lyn Lifshin Memorial Issue. Thank you for joining into this reading. We have limited time today. It may seem like only like a couple hours, but that will go quickly. And we also have the fact that we have a lot of readers, so we're going to dispense with all introductory remarks. And then just get to the reading itself. I'd ask that if you are not reading to please mute yourself. And when you are reading, please unmute. And then after you're reading, please mute. I do want to make a couple of announcements first. I put into the chat on the side, if you do want to receive any printed issues of LIPS for this issue or for other issues, there's a address there. If you want to send me any other questions, you can put them in the chat and I'll address them later. Also like to mention at this time that I would like to thank Passaic County Community College for their support in this reading, and Maria Mazziotti Gillen, and for Smita Desai as well, who helped facilitate this reading. Also to the Laura Boss Poetry Foundation, which is also starting to help support LIPS in its ongoing efforts to bring you new books every year. The next submission period for LIPS will start September 1st, will end November 30th, and that will be through Submittable. And mention also that the Laura Boss Poetry Foundation will be sponsoring a book award, a narrative poetry book award, and submission period is now open, runs from January 1st to March 31st. The winner will receive $5,000 and publication by NYQ Press. And if you haven't already submitted to that, that's something you can consider. If you want me to put that into the chat, the Web Foundation address, I'll certainly do that. Tell you right now, it's laurabospoetryfoundation.org. So I would like to start the reading with some comments and a poem by Albert Jordan and his grandchildren. So Albert, if you're there, please unmute yourself.
Okay, I'm here.
Okay. And if you want to make whatever comments you may want to before your reading, or just read your poem.
Well, I'll just read it for now. If there's time at the end, I could, respond to any questions.
Thank you.
Living with Lyn, still 27 years, feeling like a blur, like a few short years. She helped me see what little time I have. Readings, foreign films, dancing, friendships, not cooking, listening and not, seeing and not, touching and not. She wrote more than I could read. Oh, we played with words, and now I read her poems, missing her beyond imagination, and yet she is sometimes nearby. I know she loved me and maybe still does. Thank you.
Lyn. Yeah.
And now we have from, I think, Elizabeth Morris and William Morris.
Lyn, a lifetime of love. She was sweet, kind, and loving, like a huge piece of glitter, and loving, outstretched angel wings, put together in a woman. She loved writing and poems, which is sometimes hard to find in people. creative, smart, funny, and a joy to be around. Lyn.
Right, mine's a little shorter, but my Lenny. Nice to me, nice to other. When we visited, she'd smile, her eyes half open in joy. Her smile reminded me of my mom, who loved me and others. My Lenny.
Thank you very much. That's very wonderful. Now I'm going to announce poets in groups of 5 so that not everyone from the book is reading, so the list is a little shorter than what is in the book. So to help you figure out where you are in the queue, the next readers will be in order: Grace Cavalieri, Janet Colstein, Catherine Howard McCann, Darlene Myers, and then Richard Peabody. So first we have Grace Cavalieri.
Thank you. On point. I cannot make my poems as slender as pocket poems like yours, but now I think now of all the poems you did not write and know you're still working on them under the expressive eye of a mother who lost control of your past and all your bedrooms and your party dresses. So I just this moment stopped to pick up flowers for you, to say goodbye. And then I saw the color of your skin, the long blonde hair on your shoulders, and I turned away because no one likes feelings too sad to tell. So I will describe instead what it felt to know you, who is most alive with your 100+ books, which are like having 100+ funny, sad friends, written by a girl who witnessed everything from the dark within her, turning it into the true blue light we still read by. Well, there's no epitaph to hold your half-imagined branches that will bloom whenever we read you. Yet I think of the last time I saw you on the subway to your ballet lessons, which you took every week until your end. And these are not ideas good enough to write an epitaph. And if they were, they wouldn't fit on marble. And if they did, there's no one good enough to write them. But we will still know you, and always will, as we keep the fierce flashing of your bright, edgy words, gift wrapping our memory. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. Next reader is Janet Colstein. Is Janet here?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. 14 years. You have a way of speaking with your claws. You scratched my leather sofas and rendered them crap. You sank your talons into my carpets and made them shabby. Worst of all, you lanced a dirty nail and dug a rut in my thumb. It's not the first time you drew blood. Why do I tolerate your feral regards? My apartment exudes a certain odor of regurgitated cat food mixed with mint, lemon, and all-purpose pledge wipes. It gets harder and harder to swab the floor without risking a sprain. The bathroom scale is our enemy. You're losing and I'm gaining. Under your striped fur, I can feel your bones. You were always more pelt than corpus. Your paws and mine are weak and arthritic. We both nap. I bought a pack of plastic task gloves that do double duty with COVID-19, and the masks come in handy when changing the litter. To feed and make you better is a pressing concern, but it's working only so-so. I have fears for our future. Is that pain in my side the thought of your demise? Your eyes, dilated, speak of suffering, of black holes. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. Next reader is Catherine Howard McCann.
Go. Lyn was absolutely pivotal to my beginning career as a poet. And this poem is written in memory of Lyn Lifshin and her summer writing workshop at the College of St. Rose in Albany, New York. 1975. Out of Iowa, where brows rose high to see a woman who dared to write. Out of cornfields, flat miles of soy, sunsets spreading edge to edge, as though to silence unsure tongues. Out of walls where words from men were sacrosanct, secure, sublime. I traveled home again and found a gaze that welcomed my life's poems. A voice that said, but yes, of course, women must write what we know, into body, into loving, into what good anger brings for art that resonates through time.
Thank you. Now, Darlene Myers.
Moo. From the Zen translation, neither yes nor no, all inclusive of both. These days, hours, nights are questions asked for me, by me, of me. Nothing into everything, everything into everything. Valleys unknown to my feet, my ears, my nostrils. Then a celebration of Lyn Lifshin's life. Pathways of joy, embarrassments of the riches. Children found as adults, whispered their suspicions, dusk-colored secrets. She flourished after my introduction, flying, floating, a world traveler, a goddess, under the wings of his incense. Volumes I cannot recall in my own organs, feeling the ache in my bones. I loved her, not as he loved, and not as I loved him. Inclusive lives, lives not once lived. There are many, we are many, both yes or no. Thank you.
Thank you, Darlene. Next reader is Richard Peabody. Is Richard here? Can you unmute if you're reading? Okay, maybe he's not logged in.
No. I'm okay. My name is on the screen.
Hello?
Yeah, my
this-
name is on the screen, right?
Who's talking?
That was Charles Johnson.
Okay, I guess if Richard is not here, then our next 5 readers upcoming will be Charles Rossiter, Hildy Weissert, Warren Wussner, Maria Mazziotti-Gillen, and myself. So first, then we'll go to Charles Rossiter.
The Madonna who ignored submission guidelines. Milwaukee, early 1970s, struggling the warehouse district, I saw a sign, office for rent. It was the Marshall Building in the middle of what's now Milwaukee's 3rd Ward. This was before the building or the neighborhood was gentrified. There were just a few tenants and a lot of open space when we poets moved into our 12 by 12 office with a desk, file cabinet, and pillows on the floor. We christened the space the House of Words, and from there launched our literary magazine, The Third Coast Archives. Rent was $30 a month. We didn't know what we were doing, but we were enthusiastic and got the word out that we existed and were open for submissions. This was before email. The rent included mail delivered under the door. And it wasn't long before we met Lyn Lifshin via a very thick envelope of poems. Our guidelines said, submit 3 to 5. But the Madonna who ignored submission cracks me up. Submission guidelines clearly didn't care and has sent us a dozen. Like a lot of other editors, we said, what the hell? Read the submission and took the ones we liked. She became a regular contributor. Fast forward to the 90s, I was living in upstate New York, where I occasionally heard Lyn read, and I suppose she occasionally heard me. I didn't know her well, but was always aware of her presence as someone I admired. After all, she was one of those rare people who somehow manages to make it as a full-time poet, writing poems, giving workshops, ignoring submission guidelines, completely dedicated to her art.
Thank you, Charlie. Next reader is Hildy Weissert.
Line of sight. This is the year for finding out that what we thought we knew is wrong. Wrong, the Scott Forsman picture pretty past, wrong even the we thought we were. Me, brought up short at how I was brought up, the stumble off the tilt-a-whirl, our green faces snapped in a photograph that pixelates now into Glen Echo's whites only sign, a smash up, lurid flash up out of the shadows. And quieter, this is a year for rereading settled texts. What I thought I knew, old shoe, you. Your short I name a synonym to some for too much poetry. Me, my New York smug lines tilted, made me think I knew the names I knew, but this is 2020 and time for a rereading mind to find a poet doing what a poet does. Lyn Lifshin, poet perennial, observer inveterate. The long line of sight now courses through the short ones, book after book, opening and unsettled. Thank you.
Thank you, Hildy. Next reader is Warren Wisner. Warren, please unmute before you read.
I met Lyn in Madison, Wisconsin when she was doing a benefit reading for a radio station we were trying to get on the air. Poem is called I Get Around. I'm the news after the tornado. I am the cool guy cruising up and down the one street in Argyle, Wisconsin. I am the ghost of the Sharptown curve, waiting for another white trash kid to fold his hot Chevy around a tree. I am the Milwaukee Road. I am the swallows who nest under the eave of Grandpa's stone house. I am a manta ray cloud. I am Mr. Comet, Mr. Lonely, a stunned hawk, a road-killed bird, a gannet diving for a fish, a raven in Sitka, a member of the Grackle gang that wants me gone. I am the children and their pets who ride the first snowflakes home. I am the old house that keeps them safe from the endless cold. Thank you. Hi, Maria.
Thank you. Now, Maria is next. I'm sorry. Thank you.
That's okay. What do I know about grief or how death would follow me like a determined lover, taking first my mother, father, sister, my best friend of 42 years. Then my husband, more friends each year. How his bony finger would point at the next person. Once I walked into a spider web, and I think grief is like that. It catches in your hair and lashes. My friend's husband died after a short and brutal illness. They were as close as two spoons. When he died, she told me she had always been happy just to be in their apartment with him. Even passing him in the hallway felt like an act of love. And the weeks after my husband died, in the months waterlogged with tears, I thought what I would not survive. But gradually I began to imagine that he came back to visit me, a shadow in the corner of the room, a presence sitting in a chair beside me, though of course he could never stay long. I am comforted by his ghost self. I am sure he's telling me that he is content in that other world where I cannot touch him. I am grateful there is a door through which he can pass to visit me, even for a moment, his ghost hand in my hair.
Thank you, Maria. Did you want to read your other poem?
No, did I want to what?
Did you want to read your other poem?
No, I don't need to read your
Okay.
poem.
I'm next up to read. Just wanted to say one thing about this poem as a matter of personal privilege here. While I was putting this issue together with Laura, she was coming toward her final days, and it was a very difficult thing to do, especially since it was, something I didn't want, of course. I didn't want her to die. I'm working on the memorial issue for Lyn, who I knew through various correspondence over the years. And I guess coming off of the fact that my mother had just died several months earlier, not too long, couple months. So I thought that this might be a good poem for the issue. It's called Realizing. Realizing you have to arrange for everything. You have to figure the space and what you choose to fill it with, and if there will be decorations, if there should be permanence. How can any of us fill any space to be everything you wanted? How can we make do with whatever time we are allowed, realizing nothing may be what you wanted? Where we are is more important than anything we may have been or will be. But we realize we never wanted to be anywhere than in those moments that fill the end of your life, those moments we now start from without you. Next readers will be, next 5 readers, Stanley Barkin, Charles Johnson, Adele Kenny, Charlotte Mandel, and Lisa Cole Nicolau. Stanley, you're there, please unmute. We'll move on to Charles Johnson. Charles?
Yes.
I see your name there. Please unmute and read. Thank you. Charles, please unmute before you read.
My father's cane. My father's cane walks with me now. Its molded plastic handle caps brown metal faux wood with graduated notches resting on a single rubber shaft. Though an overlooked, ignored person of color swallowed by the Depression and World War II, he had no need for a cane to steady his racially hobbled gait through the fantasy 50s or the sexy 60s rhythms of peace, love, and rock and roll. He even through the selfish 70s, antisocial 80s, and numbing 90s until the new millennium whispered the king was waiting just for him. He's gone, and I have aged inheriting his support system as I limp toward my future, needing the device not for laughs like bass vaudevillian or a song and dance man's perpetually spinning prop, but purely as family totem, honoring him each time I use my father's cane. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. Next reader is Adele Kenny.
What happens after that first white of the deep snow, light of wonderment, when you finally see it and almost know it for what it is? The stone at the center of the stone, the flower at the center of the flower. On the front porch, an insect kisses the bug zapper and snaps itself out of this world, gone like all the dead who wanted to live, anonymous as moon moths and birdsong. This is about whatever spiritual means and how it changes us, how it makes us think deeply. What happens when we reach a certain age and can look back farther than we ever thought we would? The long backstory and all of our smallness. It's when we stand outside ourselves and believe in everything owned by time. This is the real world, years and doors, and so many angels dancing on the head of a pin. Thank you.
Thank you, Adele. Next reader is Charlotte Mandel.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, all these moving poems. Awakening. Lapse of memory feels like a little death, a blank in living capacity, something coming apart that connected you at birth. The years delete, neurons weaken, like the gasket that shriveled on the car's oil pump, dying of bloodstream vessels that feed brain neurons. To know is a means to power. Anatomical lessons abound in the body's storage bin of data. From the tangle of sensory receivings, decide what to fondle or toss into trash of vaporous forgetting. Keep today's early spring awakening, a flock of birds giving sound to trees still leafless. February can begin to reassure return of growing seasons. Stay, listen, dawn is eternal.
Thank you, Charlotte. And our next reader is Lisa Cole Nicolau.
Thank you, Jim. Offerings. At 17, my grandmother sailed from Puerto Rico and arrived at New York Harbor along with the Spanish flu. Her skin turned ghostly blue as she received last rites, but miraculously she survived and spent her remaining 70 years wheezing while giving her love to all of us, especially to me, the youngest of the lot. This March, I put away my tote bags, my schedules, donned an apron, and started to speak to my grandmother. I recall her cooking tricks, save the onion skins and carrot shavings, break the eggs with tenderness, and whisk them gently, remembering how she presented each dish to us like an offering. I wake early these mornings, listen to the birds outside my window, crack the eggs with care, and slide the yellow orb onto a plate, present it to my beloved daughters. Here, I whisper, is something whole, made from something broken. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next 5 readers, I'm going to fit in someone who we had to skip over, but who is now here. Richard Peabody, then Rochelle Parker, Lainey Sutton Johnson, Marion Paganello, and Lori Ruzick. So Richard Peabody.
Thank you, Jim, for sneaking me in here. And so many friends. Hi, everybody. Lyn Lifshin was a gauge for measuring the jealousy of poets. Already legendary in Rolling Stone before I left high school, she rode the wave from boho to hippie chick. Her poetry was omnipresent in the indie world. My friends hated her production, her success, or else they wanted to better. Few women poets in my universe ever spoke of her. Nobody ever said they wanted to be like her, and yet so many owe her everything. When we finally met, I flashed Anais Nin, long hair and kohl, her reading voice as out of place to my ear as Bukowski's high-pitched giggles. Her work, part of her, and yet somehow one step removed, words racing through her like brush fires, tornadoes, thoroughbreds, like an extraordinary puzzle. The more you read, the closer you get. How art sparks to process, to create, to light up dark caves, New England nights, to chase ghosts and loneliness away.
Thank you very much, Richard. And now Rochelle Parker.
During the pandemic, I don't miss eating out. I realized I can fry chicken, put on a pot of collard greens with a piece of fat meat, and spread a beef Wellington thick with duxelle. I made a sweet potato pudding for my father for his birthday that he loved. He had the first piece, and before I could put down the spoon, he held his plate up for another scoop. I like to think it was as good as his grandmother's treats. Once he had said she put a hurtin' on a marble cake. His shoulders shivered. I believe a chill ran up his back. Maybe she had come through these daughters' hands to take care of her favorite grandson on his born day. That happens. An ancestor reaches through a cloud, through a recipe to put a smile on your face. By now, I hope she trusts me to feed her baby boy. Maybe she'll walk me through that marble cake.
Thank you, Rochelle. Next reader is Lainey Sutton Johnson. Is Lainey here? Charles, is Lainey here?
She's here.
Okay.
She's trying to unmute.
Oh, thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you, Jim. Safety net. Shopping with my oldest daughter, she lives with us now, brings me to a Ferris wheel we rode 40 years ago. Partway down, I crumbled, so the child became a fabric, wrapping all around me, pulling the pieces together until we found the ground. Now, she's shopping, shielding me from a deadly germ, crumbling lives like Ferris wheels that never stop. People are jumping off, throwing children off, saving them from seen and unseen disaster. Shopping with my oldest daughter, cheerful in her fragile world, still wrapping me in safety with her cautiously woven cloth. I am still shaken in my safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Lainey.
Thank you.
Our next reader is Marion Paganello.
Hi, Jim. Thank you. Email. In July, my eldest son emailed me to say, I shut off my phone. I am not renewing my lease on my apartment. I closed my bank account. I am deleting this email, so don't try to respond. You will have no way of contacting me. As the COVID cursed months accumulated, I had been trying to convince my son not to go to LA. asking him to stay put, to stay safe, to wait. But at 27, he had his own plans, his own sense of invincibility. I imagined his journey westward on all those gritty connecting buses, arriving in LA, the city a blazing heart of infection, the virulence a rampant, humming, insidious energy. I imagined him walking the busy streets, the shadowed alleys, the crowded sidewalks, in with or stepping around the homeless, the air rank with sweat and fear and menace, whispering his particular mantras to himself, silhouetted against an LA sunset, the color of bourbon. I imagined and sent, as any mother would, wave after wave of protective incantations. I mouthed extravagant prayers that he would survive, defying the terrible odds, perhaps even thrive, fulfilling whatever purpose he had set for himself. At the end of his email, my son included a link for, of all things, a very cool ergonomic broom and dustpan set. So like him to go from the devastating to the mundane in one paragraph. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Marion.
Thank you.
Our next reader is going to be Lori Ruzick.
The dress. I know how the COVID-19 crisis started. There was a seismic shift in the universe, an event so unnatural, so foreign to normal life, that it allowed for this profound fault line in time, which altered our existence. And it was me. How can we really be sure if someone ate a bat or if a Wuhan lab tech fell asleep? Here's how it really happened. I bought a dress for a May 2020 wedding in September of 2019. That was it. I, who usually only shops 3 days before an event, purchased a dress. Forget that it was on sale. There are only two relevant facts here. That I would have purchased a dress 8 months in advance is cryptic. And that I still liked it is, well, scary. In all the years I've shopped for evening wear, I have rarely still liked it 24 hours after purchase. And I had never before bought anything on sale. I will say that when the text came from my cousin saying that the wedding was canceled, my first thought should have been of the heartbroken young couple, Kate and Dan, whose special day would have to wait. But honestly, my mind went right back to the dress purchased in September from that summer clearance rack at Anthropology to the dress I normally would be questioning by now. Do I really like it? But instead still love. Bought for a world that no longer exists, in a moment that may have unleashed the wrath of the universe.
Thank you, Lori. Our next 5 readers will be Deborah Garish, Kyle Gregory, Fred Ucci, Michelle Lerner, and Penny Perry. First up is Deborah Garish.
Thank you. Calamity. Faith travels from Trader Joe's to Costco to Stop and Shop to Walgreens and King's or to CVS from ShopRite in search of toilet tissue paper. Coronavirus inconveniences in the Valley of Shadows. But what do I know? Over 100 years ago, survivors cobbled truths from death marches across Anatolia. And during her escape from the Armenian genocide of 1915, my grandmother was lucky to find a scrap of newspaper, headlines swinging like a rope over the bloodied Tigris.
Thank you, Deborah. Next reader is Kyle Gregory.
Basic training. There were government employees in the post office once, government employees armed with small arms and with rifles slung behind their backs, with rifles slung across their bodies and in uniforms of camouflage. And I want to ask, if it's conditioning, if it's conditioning me to expect that I have no right to knowledge that there are armed, uniformed soldiers in the post office while I'm trying to send my grandmother poems through the mail. I look around to see if anyone else has a grandmother who says, these men are here to guard your word against fire bombings and dirty nuclear weapons and intercontinental ballistic missile threats. But all I see are glowing faces and memes, luxury suits and straight white teeth, new houses and cars and garages filled with grandmothers who have landed and are ready to send their daughters' sons poems through the mail with no insurance or worry that they may come under fire. This is the sun's poem, and it is barely kindling.
Thank you, Kyle. Our next reader, Fred Ucci. Sorry
Hi,
if I
everyone.
mispronounced.
Thank you, Jim. Uncle Robbie's glass. My father had a black friend named Robbie. They worked together at the Hegeman Farms Milk Company. He lived in St. Albans, an integrated community not too far from our house in Queens Village. Sometimes when he would call our house, I would pick up the phone and I would hear a booming, husky black man's voice say, "Hello, Freddie, this is your Uncle Bob." And I would know it was my father's coworker, Uncle Robbie. I don't know why we called him Uncle Robbie, but I know when he would stop by our house, he only came in as far as the back pantry. That was as far as our dog was allowed to come in because Buster made hair all over the place, according to my mother. When Uncle Robbie came to visit, she would tell me, "Go get Uncle Robbie a glass of water." And I knew that meant to go to the kitchen cabinet that was directly over the stove and fill the glass that was kept as far away as possible from all the other glasses, because that was Uncle Robbie's glass. It was just for Uncle Robbie, and it was the only glass in its cabinet. When I was in Queens College in the early 70s, we were having a barbecue in our backyard. I had just come home from my kitchen job at Mary Immaculate Hospital. I stopped in the yard to greet our guests before going inside to change out of my uniform. My mother asked me to bring her a glass of water when I came out. A brilliant idea came to me. I remembered that lonely glass in the cabinet over the stove that had not been used in what seemed like many years. My father had left the milk company at least 5 years before that summer, and I could not remember the last time I had picked up the phone and heard that husky black man's voice greet me with, "Hello, Freddie, this is your Uncle Bob," or the last time he stood behind the dog's gate in the pantry. I filled up Uncle Robbie's glass with cold water and brought it out to my mother. She stared at the glass for a moment before taking a long drink from it. Suddenly, she spit out the water and asked, "Where did you get this glass?" I responded proudly, "From the cabinet over the stove. It's Uncle Robbie's glass." She threw the rest of the water at me and shouted, "You son of a bitch." I was so happy I had made my mother drink from Uncle Robbie's glass that she reserved in a special spot only for him, for the same Uncle Robbie to whom my father would say, "Robbie, I'm going to skin that block right off of you." And Uncle Robbie would let out a hearty, husky laugh. You may not be able to teach old dogs new tricks, but like charity, fighting racism begins at home. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Our next reader, Michelle Lerner.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I had the poem. Okay, I'll tell you how it was. I'll tell you how it was. The water flooded between my knees, poured out and out over the metal bed onto the floor. I removed everything, the bed sheets, the gown, myself from the bed, the mask of complacency, every thread of inhibition. "She likes to be naked," the nurses said, as you bore down on me harder, farther than they warned, scooping out my insides, making room for the howl and the moan, the scream that wouldn't let them near me, the scent of lavender, the music, now ridiculous in its inability to reach beyond my skin into the space where you were. I tore at the wires they strapped onto me, screamed with a widened mouth, stretched demon shape and open as God. Everyone who wanted to help retreated in the face of the fierceness, the helplessness, the space that opened farther and farther into me, with you inside pounding no way out.
Thank you, Michelle. Our next reader from, I hope, someplace warm, Penny Perry.
Hi, Jim. Thank you. Girls' work. My pink-lipped daughter wants to pierce holes in her ears and belly. Don't mutilate yourself for boys, I hiss, as if garter hooks never bruised twin circles in my thighs, or my girdle, that angry waffle iron, never pressed pink diamonds in my skin, or I never cried to my soon-to-be stepmother. My scalp is burning, my hair wound tightly in rollers. I ducked my head out of the dryer. But Anita, tilting on spike hills like a lovely palm about to topple, just laughed. She was happy in those days. My wild father had agreed at last to marry. It's girls' work to be beautiful. She handed me ice water and pushed me into the helmet of fire.
Thank you, Penny. Our next 5 readers are going to be Wanda Praisner, Margaret Sirocco, Donna Emerson, Frank Nicoletti, and Zant Wintries. First up, Wanda Praisner. Wanda, you there somewhere? If you are, unmute, please. There you are.
City of Widows, with an epigraph by Ineth, 2018. 20,000 widows live on the streets of Vrindavan, India. Norma Finn's the latest neighbor to become a widow. I count them, dread I might be next. Try instead to think of what to wear to another neighbor's wedding. I'll need a new outfit, my hair done. Outside of Vrindavan Temple, 70-year-old Radha Biswa prays, begs for food, tells me when her husband died, her son sent her away. Useless now, a financial drain. Even the educated, the wealthy, become outcasts. Here, too, time's tyranny, the certainty of change. Sons move away, fit in visits. Mothers like me, grateful. But gray gone to black for Hindu widows who must shave heads, wear white, who cannot remarry or attend weddings. Their presence, even their shadows, considered bad luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Wanda. Next, Margie Sirocco.
Thanks, Jim. Carnage at the beach. A girl in a brilliant red bikini and pigtails screams, runs in horror into her mother's arms as swarms of peanut bunker herring propel themselves out of the water into the air and onto the sand, as if the warm Atlantic waters expelled them from the sea. They blanket the beach with silver writhing bodies in a massive die-off. A small boy in black trunks runs to the water's edge, grabs fistfuls of herring, pitches them back into the pounding surf. The peanut bunkers suspend in midair, gyrate, disappear into waves. Seagulls rise from the sand and descend from the sky, snatching fish in their beaks. One boy throws the herring at the gulls. Other children join in while adults watch, cheering a macabre game of catch. In minutes, the fish are consumed or swept back into the sea. I sit on my blanket, book in hand, stunned by displays of cruelty and indifference. Swimmers return to ride breaking waves. Small children hold hands in the surf. Lifeguards scan the water for trouble. Tuned out teenagers sunbathe or nestle beneath beach umbrellas. The boy in the black trunks kicks sand at the sea. The girl in the red bikini sits on her blanket, eating a sandwich, anxiously watching the waters. This was a glorious sunny August afternoon until it wasn't. Thank you.
Thank you, Margie. Our next poet, Donna Emerson.
Thank you, Jim. My poem is called Klimt. During my mid-20s, a boy gave me a postcard of Klimt's painting, The Kiss. That boy had curly black hair, like Gustav Klimt's hero. Like the swarthy man in Klimt's painting, he held me full length against him. He loved women like that painter, and I knew we would never wed or be partners beyond our current affair. In today's exhibit at the Legion of Honor, a life-size photograph, Klimt wears an old painter's smock with likely nothing underneath. I'm sure he hasn't bathed. His feral hair and beard look tossed by the wind. He looks at the camera as if caught slightly unawares, meeting the lens, but sharing little about himself. Perhaps a wink. He's on his way to paint, then make love to his model. I still want to be one of them. Never married, he fathered 14 children, filled the world with the frank beauty of the female body.
Thank you, Don. I think our next reader, Frank Nicoletti, is not here yet. I've been texting with him. So we'll go on to Zant Wintries.
Thank you, Jim. Having to have our say. Living in a day where being a little deaf is an option we are no longer afforded. Hoarded opinions bursting at people's seams. Who knew there was so much to share and what some would dare to share? Spurring us, provoking us to share our say. Making one to long for the days when people's minds and tongues were selfish. Thank you.
Thank you, Zant.
Thank
And
you.
our next four readers, Seema Tepper, Elizabeth Marchetti, Wayne Miller, and Ken Ronkowitz. First up, Seema Tepper.
Yes. The Great Bambino. My most recent obsession, other than looking for my cell phone, has been to remember and verify scenes from the depths of memory. This really happened. I walked near the baseball diamond, my hand clasped in Daddy's hand, the green chain link fence, players on benches, no dugouts, sweat smell. This was an important event, my first baseball game. Babe Ruth really did strike out during an exhibition game in Davenport, Iowa, June 24th, 1940. Thank you.
Thank you, Seema. Is Betty here, Betty Marchetti? Okay, we will go on to Wayne Miller.
Solo. Oh, the walls, the walls, the walls, the doors, no masks. I celebrate no masks in the house. walls and doors and ceilings and floors, pacing up and down like a horse in its stall, ordering delivery. My lifeline, a copper cable. Oh, the time, so much time, and the dreams, so many dreams. Netflix opens the world to me. Dr. Google heals me. Mr. Bezos supplies me. Having to remember to comb my hair for Zoom chats keeps me sane, but it doesn't really help. The floor creaks when I walk, hinting at soil and stone below, outside my bubble, beyond my pod, and the roof leaks. Clouds appear and disappear. It's light and dark and light again. Stars appear sometimes. The moon's phases flow. I pass framed pictures on my wall that I'd like to put my head into. Paris or Rome, or maybe New York City. A coffee house with a beat poet slinging words while I play bongos wearing a beret, drinking strong coffee, sawdust on the floor, cigarette smoke all around us. The poems go on. I drift in and out of his words, but I stay with his rhythm. He stays with mine as I speed or slow, like a great rhythm section, he declaiming the best notes of life, the angles, the schemes, the losses. The most important part of my rhythm is when I'm silent, giving him the floor, the attention, and then I run point on the journey as he takes us through the streets of Greenwich Village, the artists, the musicians, the storekeepers, the junkies, his words in black and white, with an occasional spark of color like a flash bulb on a cheap camera. Another coffee, playing with one hand as I sip, then silent again. Now he's talking about when he was 5, some crazy shit his uncle was doing in an auto junkyard. I give it a steady rhythm, not knowing where he's going. I never heard this one before, but that's jazz, baby, roll with it. And then his voice trails, color returns, and I'm pacing the hallway again like I always do. The floor creaks, the phone beeps. I have another Zoom chat now, comb my hair, click the link, still inside these walls.
Nice, thank you. Now, I am wondering if Frank is here yet or Betty. Are there any other poets who are on the list? I know I'm going to end with Ken, but any other poets who were in the issue who did not get on my list? They're here today? No? Okay. Then we're going to end the reading with Ken Ronkowitz. Ken.
This poem is titled Reincarnated. Someone dies, someone is born. When I was a child, I thought that if you could find the person who died the same moment you were born, you would know who you had once been. I thought birth and death was a one-to-one operation. But I later realized that would mean that the population of the planet would never change. Still, when my father died, I wondered what baby had been born at that moment, who this year would be the age my father was when he died. And my mother's reincarnation is 9 years old this year, and being the slightly higher version of my mother is an extraordinary child.
Thank you very much, Ken. Let the recording show that there has been thunderous applause throughout. And I'm not sure if I had Frank. Actually, I think Frank rang in right at the beginning of Ken's reading. Frank, are you here? No, he didn't ring in. Okay, well, thank you so much for attending this. Hang on a second. One second. Frank is here?
Yeah, he's joining.
Oh, he's driving. Oh, joining. Oh, okay. Well, we have one more poet, Frank Nicoletti. Frank, can you unmute and read, please?
I am unmuted. Thanks for your patience. I was just with a grand group of kids, each of them reading poetry all morning long. This is Vote with Your Heart. Kids ran wild, not those of voting age. They were quite already well schooled in dipping into the cast aside, half-quaffed drinks that adults had left on tables while they danced to big band music, and younger voters gigged to Motown and Philly's very own sound of rock and roll, blasted from radio AM 990, WIBG, pronounced Wibbage by DJ Jerry Blavitt, the self-described beater with the heater, whose nasally sound we all spoke. Born and bred halfway between Richmond and Boston, ours was and still is the most despised accent in the US, at least according to the annual national survey taken by some small Midwestern college whose name I choose never to remember. But I digress. Not that digression is an undesirable trait. That night, a first-time voter, a girl whose big hair was blonde down to her indistinctly colored roots, kept urging me for an answer to, well, who'd you vote for? While we danced to the Orleans South Street, South Street. Thinking I must be at least 21, because I was, as my mother often said while she shook her head and frowned, older looking for my years, the blonde could not have guessed that I had yet to step into a voting booth. But there was in the corner of the Elks multi-purpose room at the end of the bar, a photo booth left there since it had been leased for the last fundraiser to feed Hungarian emigres. I aimed us toward that. Behind the bare back of her Robert Hall party dress, I balanced, albeit with an occasional splash, the drink de rigueur in those days, her daiquiri. And when the record spun to "Where do all the hippies meet? South Street, South Street," I launched us into the deeply pleated curtain of the booth, sat on its tiny seat, and she landed roundly on my lap. Giggling madly, she asked again between half-caught breaths, "Oh, no, you don't." Then she paused, lips now against my ear. "Not till you tell me who you voted for." Suppressing again my nerdy urge to correct her grammar, because I had bigger fish to fry. And as precocious me had learned, politics makes strange bellicose. I whispered back, "You first." And she said, "Nixon." And I thought, okay, Republican or Democrat, what's love got to do with political orientation? Anyway, I would be when I did register an independent. So, of course, I lied to her. That was a long time ago. And since then, having voted in I don't know how many elections, I remember not her name. I don't think I got it that night, nor she mine, but always I recall in the sacred and privileged moment in the voting booth, the old adage, all politics are local. And while some men and women vote with their wallets and pocketbooks, I have been a die-hard voter, truer to his heart than to his mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. This is the end of our reading for today. Before we close, I tried to put a couple things in the chat. One is for the Laura Boss Poetry Foundation, some information about that. And another is the LIPS reading period from September 1st through November 30th. That's through Submittable.